Disney Star Wars, The Acolyte, from Kathleen Kennedy-helmed Lucasfilm and showrunner Leslie Headland. Things didn't get off to the greatest start in the world for this show. Very poorly received by fans, and now, as you can see, has even hit a new low on Rotten Tomatoes, now below 15%, sitting at 14% with over 20,000 audience reviews in the till. Let's see if it gets below 10. But if that wasn't bad enough, things just went from, well, bad to worse, because on Sunday night, HBO and Max debuted House of the Dragon Season 2, and, well, let's just say, we told you so. Renegade Online. Well, folks, welcome back. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there once again. And if you are like one of the many watching this video, not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and turn that little red subscribe button to gray. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, please do leave a comment before you head out the door today. Make sure to join us every Sunday and Wednesday afternoon right here on Valiant Renegade for the live show. This is where we stand now with Star Wars: The Acolyte from Disney Lucasfilm at a 14% audience score. And yeah, the certified fresh score for critics, of course, have come under fire because they seem so far removed from the actual Star Wars fans out there that for the last 12 years have been begging the Walt Disney Company and Kathleen Kennedy to just give them some actual Star Wars, or at least some good Star Wars. And sure, they've had some bright spots in there like Mando and Grogu, at least the first couple of seasons, but outside of that, it has basically been a desert. Typically speaking, you don't want to spend billions of dollars acquiring an intellectual property just to throw that intellectual property in the trash and then insult the fan base. And a lot of people out there think that Amazon really screwed the pooch by spending $250 million just to get the rights to use the name The Lord of the Rings. But I would remind people that Disney spent $4 billion for the whole package of Lucasfilm, primarily for Star Wars, and then proceeded to throw Star Wars away and also only use the name. So which one is really the more guilty party here? But be that as it may, we covered in previous videos Disney's lauding of its own quote-unquote success, the biggest premiere of any series so far this year on Disney+, to which we simply asked the question, well, what else premiered on Disney+ this year besides The Acolyte? And the answer was simply not a whole lot. We had things like Echo and X-Men 97, and you'd be forgiven for not having watched those shows or even knowing what they are. In other words, The Acolyte didn't exactly have a tall ladder to climb to claim that prize. But Disney told us after the first 24 hours, The Acolyte had racked up 4.8 million views, and then followed up a few days later with a release plus 5. That would be the Tuesday night that The Acolyte premiered on June 4th, all the way through the close of business the following Sunday. It climbed to 11.1 million views for the premiere episode. I know 2 came out, but they're claiming this was for the premiere episode. But that was globally. That means around the entire planet of Earth, this show racked up 11.1 million views after nearly a week, and Disney Plus is a service that owns Star Wars with 150 million global subscribers. So all in all, the numbers really didn't sound that great, and when you put it into perspective with other Disney Plus shows, even recent things like Ahsoka that didn't do that hot on the service turned in about 3 million more views than The Acolyte did over that same period when it debuted last summer. The show was so bad at its premiere that even left-wing apologist publications like Rolling Stone, who, frankly, The Acolyte was seemingly made for, could not help but fall asleep during watching the premiere of the new Disney Star Wars show. But even that didn't stop other journalists and reviewers out there like Paul Tassi at Forbes magazine from taking the fandom to the woodshed for having the temerity to actually dislike a poorly executed show. But of course, that's all too commonplace nowadays for the Walt Disney Company and their friends in the access media who kiss their feet Taking fans and the audience to task for not liking something that should have been made for them in the first place. Well, you know what? You people out there that grew up with Star Wars, you guys and girls out there that spent tens of billions of dollars buying merchandise for Star Wars and loving and supporting the intellectual property over the last 4+ decades. No, you're the problem. It's not us, it's you. But then along comes something special like House of the Dragon, something that fans are very enraptured by. The first season, as we talked about previously, debuted with nearly 10 million viewers on its opening night, a Sunday, back in August of 2022. And while this season seems to have lower viewership than the first season did, at least on its premiere night, there's still a lot for Warner Brothers to celebrate because it is a huge hit. House of the Dragon in total stands at a 92% on the critic score and an 85% average audience score. Season 1, as a matter of fact, yielded a 93% total critic score and an 82% audience score. Season 2, after its premiere episode a few days ago, 92 for critics and 88% on the audience side. Now, short of a catastrophe, I seriously doubt we're going to see that audience score plummet down to levels of The Acolyte, which you'd have to reach about 2 feet down into the drain pipe of a toilet to find, now sitting at 14% and seemingly continuing to fall. Now, if you believe Samba's numbers as gospel, and quite frankly, nobody should, as we've talked about before, they suggested that 1.3 million U.S. households tuned in to watch the Season 2 premiere of House of the Dragon on Sunday night, suggesting that it was down 50% from the 2.6 million U.S. households that watched Season 1, Episode 1 over its first day. Now, if you're like me and have a lick of common sense, you probably took a look at that number and realized that probably doesn't make any sense. I'm going to go ahead and wait for Warner Brothers to put out their official numbers, which they had in the past, just like they did with Season 1, and let's see what they come up with. It might be something a little bit different. And lo and behold, a couple hours after the Samba numbers came out, just like I figured it might, well, we got the Warner Brothers numbers, and the Season 2 premiere of House of the Dragon hit 7.8 million viewers. Now, they say this was down 22% from the premiere of Season 1, but there's some caveats in there that we need to talk about. And one of those may have to do with the fact that this was the biggest premiere on the Max streaming service ever. Remember, House of the Dragon is on 2 very different sets of broadcast. One, Max itself, the streaming company, but also still on a cable channel, a linear broadcast channel that's still on HBO. And cable still reaches about 60 to 70 million homes here in the United States, with many of them subscribing to HBO. But to be clear, that 7.8 million figure, insofar as we know from Warner, is for everybody, and that's just in the United States alone. The other thing to bear in mind is that even over just the last 2 years, there has been even more of a shift from watching HBO through a linear cable provider to Max, the streaming service. And that could suggest that there are fewer people choosing to make appointment viewing a thing, even though the vast majority still seem to do it. 7.8 million, meaning they watch the show right when it drops Sunday night, versus now that they have it on streaming versus their old cable subscription, they are much more free to watch it on demand the next day, or say Tuesday. That's why we need to wait for the full week's numbers from Warner. Let's go back to The Acolyte. 4.8 million people tuned in to watch The Acolyte over its first 24 hours. The figure that Warner Brothers gives us is just for the premiere night. That is Sunday night. That's not 24 hours later all the way through Monday night. That's just Sunday night. And again, the 4.8 million that then legged out to about 11 million over the next 5 days are global figures, and Disney Plus is available in dozens of international territories. Other data out there from places like Luminate, in partnership with Variety magazine, suggested that the viewership for the first week of The Acolyte, the Tuesday through the Thursday, at least insofar as how they measure those first 2 or 3 days, which would capture the overwhelming bulk of views for a show like that just premiered, that might have been around 2 to 2.5 million views in the U.S. over a couple of days, We're talking about 7.8 million views for House of the Dragon in just a matter of a few hours on Sunday night. House of the Dragon is easily beating the pants off of the Acolyte to a tune of maybe 4 or perhaps even 5 times the viewership. But Samba suggested the viewership for House of the Dragon fell 50% from its season 1 premiere, but that doesn't jive even remotely with what Warner Brothers put out. And as we've said before, Samba does have some interesting data to put out if you compare it within other measurements that Samba TV has made itself within its own system, although obviously it is not without its flaws. But let's go take a look at what Samba TV reported the viewership to be over the same period for the debut of The Acolyte just a couple of weeks ago. Well, that's weird. Yeah, Samba never actually reported what the numbers for The Acolyte were. They just threw it up in a top 10 weekly chart that doesn't actually show the viewership they measured for those top 10, and The Acolyte was sitting at about number 6 or 7 when it debuted that week. One would have to wonder if Samba is maybe just trying to save Disney some humiliation by not publishing the numbers, because if they only measured 1.3 million views for House of the Dragon when the number was closer to 8 million, then you have to wonder how bad the Samba viewership numbers were for The Acolyte when it debuted. It's almost like Samba's trying to protect Disney for some absolutely unknown, inexplicable reason. But I digress. Let's go back and take a look at some other information from the report from THR, that's the Hollywood Reporter, and Nielsen. The second season premiere of House of the Dragon brought in 7.8 million viewers across all platforms in the United States alone Sunday night. Not 24 hours, not release plus 1, 2, or 3, just Sunday night before midnight in the respective time zones. A strong showing without a doubt, THR says, but about 22% below the show's record-setting series premiere in August of 22. Still, the 7.8 million viewers for House of the Dragon's first night for Season 2 positions the show for another huge season. And that's because the first season of House of the Dragon, even starting out at 10 million views on its opening night for the premiere, ended up averaging 29 million views in the United States alone across the platform viewers, meaning HBO and Max on streaming per episode. But what's truly interesting here is what THR threw in down here, a report from Nielsen showing that Sunday, and this was Father's Day in the United States, which is not when the first season premiered 2 years ago. That premiered in August. This was a Father's Day Sunday night. Sunday was a historically low TV usage night per Nielsen, which may have affected the first night numbers some. Now, only time will tell on that, but the fact of the matter is we'll probably get another report from Warner Brothers after the first week has concluded here, hopefully like we got 2 years ago. And I would think that that first week's viewership is probably going to show some relatively similar numbers, north of 20 million, maybe reaching as high as 25 million for this premiere episode over the course of the week in the US alone. And remember, The Acolyte racked up 11.1 million views in a very similar time frame around the entire globe. And these two shows could not be more different, even though they are both headline intellectual properties for their respective studios. They both spent $20+ million per episode to create these things, and House of the Dragon is dropping episodes that are roughly twice as long as those of The Acolyte. And House of the Dragon typically comes in with 10 episodes per season instead of The Acolyte's 8 when you get right down to it. The Walt Disney Company spent more than twice as much per minute of finished product, nearly $750,000 per minute of finished product. More than twice as much as what Warner Brothers spent to complete House of the Dragon. It's absolutely insane. Disney has got to get a grip on reality. And frankly, if they're going to spend that much money, these shows had better look and feel awesome. And The Acolyte, quite frankly, is anything but. It'd be lucky to get compared to a CW show in terms of production quality and finished look. Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.